Wrapping up the weekend of footy.
Get Purple in here and discuss footy.
This is Damo's recovery session. When you need a tool, call Coates Hire on 13 15 52.
Oh, got a bit to discuss too. Damo, welcome to you.
Yeah, we do, and some of it's not nice, particularly when it's the James Sicily confirmation today that he has done an ACL and will miss 12 months of footy. And if we go to the August 17 period of a normal season, we're up to about round 21, 22 or thereabouts. So you now, at this stage anyway, start to think that he may not be seen again on an AFL venue until 2022 if they decide to take all the precautions around a big man, a key position player, having an ACL injury at this time of the calendar year. So it's really unfortunate, isn't it? I think he's really emerged, hasn't he, now in the last 3 seasons as being elite talent. And in some arguments, he might even be, Jim, the most important player on Hawthorn's list. And in keeping with how that team has now fallen all the way down to 16th on the ladder, it's yet another problem they've got to wade through.
They are battling Hawthorn, and it sort of snuck under our guard a little bit, hasn't it? You look at the radar, you look at the ladder, and you think, wow, you're just not used to seeing the Hawks parked down there.
No, and I still sense that there's going to be a form of conflict over what is the plan ahead. We know that Alastair Clarkson, just historically, since he's been successful, does not like playing the kids. And that's not a criticism. I'm not raising that as criticism. It's just the way he's been. And he's always been able to back himself to do things his way. But clearly now we've got a situation at the Hawks where both the chairman or president in Jeff Kennett and CEO in Justin Reeves have both in recent weeks gone public with a need and expressing a plan to play kids. And it is in contrast with the way Alastair likes to coach. And while they've managed to keep all that, I suppose, behind-the-scenes friction away from the public eyes, I just feel it's still, as we said a couple of weeks ago, potentially going to blow up at some stage.
All right, play the audio from Saturday night because I need to pick your brains on this one too, Purple.
Every schoolboy's dream. Kick after the siren to win the game for your club. Wasting no time, Jack Newnes. Set shot. He strikes it beautifully. He's got it. The Blues win it. Jack Newnes after the siren has won the game for Carlton. That is unbelievable.
Oh, I thought you were going to play the great Komet, but geez, that was handled very nicely.
It's a very
Now,
nice
Purple,
call.
I just want to I want to say this to you. In 2020, how is it that we handle the finish of a match so appallingly badly? Now, firstly, the free kick, downfield free kick, I think was appalling, but that's a judgment call. But then secondly, we don't get the spot the ball went out of bounds correct, and we don't get the person who kicks the ball correct, and both of those ended up costing Freo the win.
Yeah, and you're onto this as it unfolded. A few of us have dissected it since and have come to similar conclusions. So you're all over it, Jim. And I don't think I'm talking out of school, am I, given the private conversation you and I had after it, in that the potential use of the umpire of the ARC, the AFL Review Centre, is something that I know that you are really keen to potentially explore. And I just think it's an outstanding idea that at that stage, when the siren has gone, when there isn't the pressure to get the decision done within the confines of an ad break before the ball's being bounced down again. I mean, there's no time limit then, is there, at that moment in time to just to make sure you get the decision right. And I think your suggestion should be one that is embraced by the AFL for future umpires faced with that situation where decisions can be made in a reasonable amount of time in order to get the decisions right. And I think what you're referring to there is where the actual place of the mark was for the play for the Jack Newnes kick, and clearly the Jack Newnes situation where he was allowed to take the kick ahead of Michael Gibbons was also an error in this situation as well.
Fat, for me, this is it. If the mark is placed where the ball crossed the boundary, it's 50 metres out. There's no question in my mind of that. And then if Michael Gibbons, and we love little Gibbo, he's a great friend of ours here on the Rush Hour, but if he is then correctly allocated the ball to kick in, Bill, he ain't making the distance.
No.
Let alone kicking a goal. He's flat out getting it to the goal square.
I'd like to know if they had a chat, Newnes and Gibbo, and I think Eddie Betts was even there with the umpire. And did they quickly work it out and said, Newnesy, you take the kick, you're the best kick here? Was there any talk of that, Damo?
Look, there's been various talk, Bill. I mean, the AFL as we speak is yet to sort of sign off on the specifics of all of it. But it's that to me is the one part that no matter what they managed to put out with their release, that was the wrong part of it. It had to be, as Jim said, a Michael
he's
Gibbons
right.
kick, and then I think to Jim's other point, it needed to be significantly further out from where it was actually taken. Look, he might have still kicked it anyway, but it would have, the degree of difficulty was about 10 out of 10. It might have been 10.5 out of 10, if that makes sense, had it been taken where the ball appeared to cross the line. And to Jim's point too about the transgression of Brayshaw onto Doherty, I didn't agree with that decision being made in the first place. I do agree with the umpire who gave the deliberate out of bounds call against Taberner. I thought that was the right decision made in that hurly-burly maelstrom of carnage that followed in the next 15 seconds.
I'll tell you who was good. Long Meyer. Wasn't he, the coach of Freo?
Muir,
He just said, Muir. He said, mate, let's get on with it. It's unfortunate it happened. Geez, he was good, I thought, the way he handled it.
Yeah, he was. And he's clever the way he said they pulled one over the umpire's eyes and then sort of made the impact with that statement and then said, but that's okay. That happens.
Yeah.
We can live with that. We'll get it at some stage ourselves. He's been very, very impressive, hasn't he? In the confines of the games themselves, the way that he's managed to look. They've only got the 4 wins, but they've been in pretty much certainly 10 out of the 11 games they've played, and they'll rue that loss on the weekend. But in the scheme of 2020 for them, it doesn't really matter. It did for Carlton. They needed the win. They got it. While they were lucky to get it the way it came, they did dominate, didn't they, Jim? Most of that second.
Yep. No, they did. They had a very good 20 minutes and should have put the game away. We're going to take a break. We've got the good and the bad. But as we go, Purple, we've got the last game of this festival tonight and then a little break. And I think we're ready for a break, to be brutally honest. Every night's been interesting, but I've got a bit of fatigue.
Yeah, you're right. The Richmond West Coast game tonight. We've then got another round of footy in a traditional sense, but you better get ready for it again, Jim. There's going to be 18 out of 19 consecutive days played where 31 matches are coming up between rounds 14 and 17. So have a little break between them.
It's the Rush Hour on Triple M, JB and Bill, and for Coates Hire, Damien Barrett is joining us.
Damo and Jim, I've just got a little stat here from Swamp, who does some very good stuff. The win-loss for each AFL team decided after the final siren. Geelong have won 9, lost 3. Sydney 7-3, and down the bottom, Melbourne are 0-6. From goals after the siren, which is Collingwood are 1-6, if you don't mind. So just some stats there. But Damo, what are you going with? Are we going positive first?
Let's go positive. I really, really, really like what the Cats have been doing in the past month, but particularly the past week. I mean, we spoke at this time last Monday, and they had a game against the Saints that night, which many people gave the Saints a big chance in. They blew them away, the Cats, and then 4 days later, on the Friday, they then had a greater challenge against the still ladder leader in Port Adelaide, and they did a number on them. They, I feel right now, as all round equipped to deal with the requirements of 2020, and I reckon that they've emerged at the right time in that way that many premiership clubs do hit their straps late in the season. They've still got 6 games to go, obviously, or 5 games to go, or 6, sorry, but. It is 5. Back to 5. Sorry, Bill. It's 5 games to go, but they're just doing everything right, and they've now got themselves up into 3rd position on the ladder. Their best is certainly good enough, and look, I reckon there's reason for you to get really excited right now.
Well, it was a great week if you're a Geelong supporter. Let me tell you, sit on the couch Monday night, have a great win, and Friday night, there's 2 nights out of the week. But you're right, but I do, and I love the way Chris Scott's coaching too, so well done to Chris Scott. But I think it's Geelong's turn in the sun. We've all had it, hadn't it? Port Adelaide were going to win it there at one stage. Brisbane were going to win it. West Coast certainly look good. What have they won? 7 in a row. So different teams, different times of the year. But as you said, there's still 6 games to go, Damo. So we'll just keep the lid on it.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
They're defending very well. That's what I like, Purple. They held St Kilda to 30 points. They held Port Adelaide to 30 points. Both teams that hit the scoreboard really hard. So that's the thing that's impressive to me. Not only are they able to execute going forward themselves, but then they're defending the ground and scoring shots against, entries against. That would be, I imagine, the thing that Chris Scott's really happy about.
Yeah, and they're scoring the most of any team too. They're averaging 74 points or thereabouts a game. They've got some, I still feel some tricks to play. Gary Ablett, I do believe, will be over in a hub in time to get a game, maybe 2 games into his system before the finals. I still feel, Bill, and you might have some intel on this that is better than mine, but I still feel that Josh Jenkins is going to be given a chance. And I think now that he's got to this stage of this season, he's clearly fit enough to now go again. It might just be the best thing for him to just have a 5 to 6 game run at it, to just have a crack and to play that role either with Stanley or with Hawkins, either in the ruck or the forward lines, just as a pinch hitter as opposed to the main man. I think he could really emerge as a potential boost for this club.
Well, the other one you got is Sava Radaglia, who I know the coach does like, and he wants to play. So it's going to be difficult to try and get both those, Jenkins and Radaglia, into that side, Damo. So really, because they're having a good run, touch wood, with injuries. So that's why they're getting nearly their best team out there. And the other bloke that the coach would love to play is Cockatoo, that we haven't seen for about a year, but has played all these practice games.
It's been about 7 years we haven't seen him.
Yeah, but he's played in all these games that they play, whatever they're called, not really practice games, but he's been playing in them all. He's waiting to go. So there's a couple of boys there really wanting to have a go. But I don't know, honestly, who you drop out of those last 2 wins. Sam Simpson's the one. He got did a hammy, poor old Narrows boy. But other than that, I don't know who you drop.
Melbourne are in the 8, Purple. They are in the 8.
Yeah, and like what they're doing, and they've still got that game up their sleeve, haven't they? Which we keep referring to, the Essendon game that was postponed from round 3. I did take a bit of value out of what they did on the weekend against Collingwood. I know Collingwood's got its issues. We'll discuss them in the bad section of this Monday afternoon chat or this Monday evening chat. But the previous wins were against Adelaide and North Melbourne. I thought the Collingwood win was the most comprehensive one that they've got. They've got their systems going, haven't they? And since Glenn Bartlett, Jim, made those comments publicly, those critical comments about his own club and his own players 3 weeks ago, they have not missed a beat. And while 2 of those 3 wins were against the bottom and second bottom team, they're still wins. They've got enough now, as you say, to get themselves inside the 8. Their destiny's now in their own hands, and their best is good enough to win the required amount of games to get through.
No doubt. Well, while we're doing the good votes or the good mentions, West Coast, you've got to keep mentioning how well they're going. They just keep winning every game placed in front of them at the moment. And I'll tell you, you'll be surprised at this, Purple, but I'm putting North Melbourne in the good. And you know why?
Yep.
Because
Luke
finally,
Davies, Uniac.
finally, they've decided that the way forward is to play all the kids on their list. They've lost 9 of the last 10, but they lost, 7 of those 10 playing players that clearly aren't at the level and clearly aren't going to be a part of the club's future. So get rid of them, play all the kids, and you see endeavour and intent, and they had a crack. That's much better.
Yeah, they did. And you called that game. It was actually hard to watch from a spectacle point of view. But to your point about North having a crack, it was what you wanted it to be. And the 1 point margin that people can see on the scoreline, it was a strange one. Wasn't given that there was a goal kick by Zuhas after the siren when it didn't matter. But having said that, you'd take that before the game started to lose by 1 point only to the team sitting second on the ladder in Brisbane.
Well, that is the blueprint for their next 15 to 20 games, in my view. And if they do that, they find out and you go forward and everyone's happy.
I love Zerha too. He just has a crack. Hey, the big forwards, Aaron McNaughton and or even Aaron Norton.
McNaughton.
Did you see the Adelaide Advertiser back page? Norton 12. Not bad. As in Adelaide, 0 and 12.
Is that like your knock joke, Bill?
I didn't mind that, Damo, but geez, Big Azza was in form, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
He can play.
He's crucially. I don't read too much into any victory these days against the Crows, but having said that, the Dogs did get some good form back into their good players. I mean, I'm both you know, I'm obsessed with Bailey Smith's form, and he was good again on the weekend, as was Bontempelli, as was Norton with those 6. But again, want to see them do it. They've got a good matchup this week against Melbourne, the Bulldogs, in what I think is one of the matches of round 13. So we'll get a clearer feel for both those teams then.
All right, we need to get to the break. Speaking of Aaron Norton, he's got pipes like mine. Great big, huge cannons attached to each arm. Rabbits, we're going to get to the bad next.
It's a rush hour, Triple M. James Brayshaw, Billy Brownless, and for Coates Hire, Damien Barrett is joining us on the Rush Hour.
All right, who didn't you like, Purple? We get to the negative part of this discussion every Monday. What aren't you liking?
As a toss of the coin between two of the big four, Jim, in Essendon and Collingwood, I'll start with Essendon because it just hasn't worked, this coaching handover from John Worsfold to Ben Rutten. They've only won the two matches since round 5, and those two matches were won against the team sitting last and second last. Adelaide they beat in round 8 by just the 3 points, and they beat North Melbourne in round 6, Bill. Prior to that, they had a win against Collingwood, so you give them a tick for that one because Collingwood was going far better then than it is now. But I do worry about it, and all the promises about this year not being wasted as they work out the Worsfold and Rutten dynamic, Jim. I feel now it is a hollow statement. They are now sitting 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. Mathematically, they can still make it, but given they haven't done anything since round 8 when they beat when they beat Adelaide, I do worry for not just this season, but what Ben Rutten does inherit in his own right as of next year.
Well, and we've had this discussion on the rub, Damo. My worry for Essendon is what they've coughed up to get Stringer, Shield and Dev Smith. Their draft access has been severely compromised over the last 3 years to get those players in. You get those players in, it would appear, because you think you're smack bang in the middle of a premiership window. If that isn't the case, and you have 3 drafts in a row where you haven't got anything at the top end, that's a big worry.
It's a really good point that they haven't had access to those first round picks in the last 3 years, and while those players you mentioned, Jim, I think have been good for them, it hasn't actually, when it's all said and done, married up with the surge that I think they were expecting to have on the back of the acquisitions of those players. So they'll be back at the draft this year. It's not in keeping with where they wanted to be. It'll be, I think, a higher pick than they probably wanted to have, given that will mean they're in the low parts of the ladder. But yeah, I just don't like what I see, and I think they've got real problems, haven't they? Particularly in the big man department up forward.
I have. How's their soft cap looking also? Because obviously Woosher would be well paid, Damo.
Yeah.
Then Ben Rutten is virtually a senior coach, so I assume he's well paid.
Yep.
And then did they get Carosella over, didn't they?
Yes, they did, and he would have taken some money to wrench away from the Tigers. So Richmond, yeah. So look again. Worsfold will come off the list for next year, but as we know, there's $3.6 million coming off every club's soft cap spend as of next year. So yeah, I'm a big believer. Once you make a decision about the future, there needs to be a really compelling reason to hang on to a part of the past. And unfortunately, right now, to me, the way I read it, John Worsfold is that. He is a link to the past. He's already known now publicly he will not be there next year in any form. And I don't now see the point of this marrying up of Worsfold with Rutten, given it's got to this semi-drastic point of this 2020 season after round 12.
Collingwood, GWS, concerns, Damo?
Yeah, there's concerns for both, aren't they? The Pies have just been smashed again with injury, and you do want to give them a little bit of a cop-out for that, and they're going to still have to endure some significant time without Treloar, De Goey, and Howe. There's others around that they will get them back sooner than those guys. So that's their worry, but ultimately they've been pretty lifeless, haven't they now? 6 wins, 1 draw at this stage of this season. They're going to have to get a minimum of 3 more to make finals, but the way they were quite lethargic against Melbourne on the weekend, they've put themselves into that zone, Jim, haven't they? Where it's not a given that they are going to do enough now to make it through. And your other point about GWS, sitting 9th now, coming out of this round 12 of the season, their draw is hard. If you have a look at the remaining teams, West Coast this week, it is hard. I think they're in a bit of bother right now. The Giants, their forward line just doesn't function, and the back line is also not as effective as it has been this time last year. So I think both of those clubs are vulnerable, particularly, Jim, with Melbourne surging and potentially the Bulldogs about to get in a run too.
Well, and that is why this game is huge coming up on the weekend, Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs, because if Melbourne, I mean, they're all ifs, we know you can't look too far ahead, but were Melbourne able to beat the Western Bulldogs, likely the Giants and Essendon are both going to have really hard games. Giants play West Coast and Essendon play Richmond. Melbourne Fat could end up 2 games clear inside the 8 with not much left of the season. So it is a huge game coming up. Anything else in the negative column, Purple, for you?
Yeah, it was. It was Elijah Taylor, this young Sydney Swans player who managed to breach the COVID-19 protocols when his partner entered without permission the hub that the Swans were living in and under over there in Joondalup in WA. And while you can look at it as being a young kid just making a bad error, it's the type of error that didn't need much more for it to happen for the state of WA to say to all people attached to AFL, get out. You've breached it, in a significant way. So while it is a harsh suspension and sanction that he's out for the rest of the year, it was the right one. It had to be done. And I know the Swans will support him, but it is the right call.
All right, buses anywhere as we go?
Yeah, we're going to send them out to Tullamarine, ready for when the Bombers get back. Because I think they've got a big off-season yet again. They just have not got this right.
All right, Purple, great catching up with you, always on a Monday.
Thanks, boys.
Damo's recovery session. When you need a tool, call Kotire on 13 15 52.
Bill's joke to wrap up another massive rush hour on Triple M.